jump into our study of Revelation. This was a couple of weeks ago. It's when the sixth seal was open. It starts running through kind of the unfolding of this time frame called the Day of the Lord. It is when God brings His judgment on the earth, and that starts off with the Antichrist coming in peace, and then there's war, and then there's famine, there's all these things, and then we get to this, and it's not the things that are men coming against men, like in war, but it's things like the moon becoming, or the sun becoming black, and all these, just dramatic things started here. This was with the opening of the sixth seal. Last week we took a moment to look at some pauses in the action that happened. What we saw is the first six seals, and then there's a pause, and then we had chapter 7. That was last week, and it was about the 144,000 being sealed. Then we see the seventh seal, and that's what we'll be looking at this morning. I just wanted to kind of run through this quickly with you. So the seventh seal has the seven trumpets. At the end of the seventh seal, or at the end of the sixth seal, there'll be another pause. And this pause will go on actually for several chapters. Then you'll have a very brief mention of the seventh trumpet late in chapter 10. And then you have the bowls, but they don't start right after that brief break, because you've also got chapters 12 and 14 kind of tossed in as another big pause. And then we get to these six bowls, and then another very brief pause before we get to the seventh bowl. So that's kind of the structure of it. Chapter 7, that pause was really answering the question, who can stand? And what we saw is the answer to the question, who can stand, in part, it's described there in Revelation chapter 7, is the 144,000. They are able to stand, not only in the face of all the wrath of God, but also the wrath of the Antichrist and Satan as he comes after them. And persecuting and martyrdom is on a rampage. And yet, when we get to the second coming, chapter 14, if I remember right, says, as Jesus stepped foot on the Mount of Olives, there are the 144,000 Jews with him. So every one of them made it. He didn't lose a couple along the way. So they are truly protected through their entire rest of this tribulation period. So we talked last time, just a brief review here of who are the 144,000. Very long answer, but I think it's important to kind of nail down who these folks are. They are Jewish male virgins who are redeemed as a first fruits. They're kind of the missionaries that will then go out and redeem many from every tribe, tongue, nation. They follow the Lamb wherever he goes, meaning that they follow his teaching. They do what he's telling them to do. They are obedient to him. They are marked with the name of God on their forehead. In chapter 14, chapter 7 tells us they're marked. Chapter 14 tells us what the mark is, and it's the name of the Son and of the Father. So we might make the argument that maybe it says Jehovah or Yahweh, the way it would really be written, meaning there's some debate about how that name should be spelled and things of that nature. But one thing we see back in the Old Testament is like at the burning bush, that is Jesus, and he's referred to as the I Am. And so we see both the Father and the Son at different times identifying that way. So what that name is, we'll find out when we get to heaven. But it is the name of the Father and the Son. And then it talks about their honesty. They don't lie. They're blameless. That doesn't mean they're sinless, but it does mean they're upright and righteous. And they are invincible. Again, all 144,000 make it all the way to the end. And that's actually something that's true of every believer in a sense. We can die, surely, but not until God is finished with us. So, you hear about some people, being in just incredible accidents and they survive it, right? And then somebody else is mowing the yard and the rock hits out of the mower, bounces off a tree, hits them in the head, and they're dead. And it's like, what are the odds, right? It's like when our time is up, it's up. And when it's not, it's not. I heard a story this week related to that. John MacArthur flies a lot, and he would get on a plane. Somebody else was telling this about him. He gets on a plane and will sit down and open his Bible and turns to the person next to him and tells them they're very lucky that they're sitting by him. And they're like, well, why is that? And he said, because I can't die until God's done with me, and he's not done. So therefore, the plane's not going to go down. You're safe. And
How does he know he's not done?
I don't know. That's his opening line. And then he may have done that once and it caught attention. I don't know. But anyway, the point being, we're all invincible until God is finished with us, and that should bring us a degree of confidence. Which brings us to chapter 8. In front of you on your questions, I have really, we're going to walk through chapters 8 and 9, and I don't know if we'll finish both, but I think it's good for us just to kind of walk through these relatively quickly. I'm not going to do a lot of running off all over the place, and you'll see kind of, I think, why as we go forward. But so let's do this. I'm going to have one of you read this section here. This is verses 1 through 5.
When the Lamb opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about a half an hour. Then I saw the 7 angels stand before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them. And another angel came and stood at the altar with a golden censer, and he was given much incense to offer with the prayers of all the saints on the golden altar before the throne. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints rose before God from the hand of the angel. Then the angel took the censer and filled it with fire from the altar and threw it on the earth. And there were peals of thunder, rumblings, flashes of lightning, and an earthquake.
So my question on here is, what is the 7th seal judgment? So we're going to look at that first. It says, when the Lamb opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about a half an hour. And I made the case last week that I think what's happening during that half hour of silence is the sealing of the 144,000. Whether that's actually how that happens or not, it's not that relevant, but I think that would make sense. The second thing would be, we've all seen a movie, or there's people and maybe they're creeping around in the woods, it's a military thing or something, and all of a sudden they'll say, listen, I don't hear anything. That's right, it's too quiet, right? When it gets too quiet, okay, look out, here it comes. That's kind of what's going on here. Everything goes silent, and it's, okay, what's going to happen next? Because what's been happening has been amazing. So go ahead.
Is this a literal half an hour?
There's no reason to think that it isn't.
Because things are really moving. If they're getting down there, things are really starting to move.
Well, but in a little bit, we'll see something that's 5 months.
Okay.
So, and here's the other thing. How do these seals, trumpets, bowls line up with the 7 years? I've heard, the seals and the trumpets are in the first half. I've heard that this 7th one opens well into the second half. I mean, there is nothing explicit that I've found yet that really answers that. And so we all take kind of our best guess, and I'm simply not saying, because I don't know. So I'm just leaving that open-ended and not telling you where I think we are with these unfolding. So, and when you take the pauses, they kind of go back and tell some of the story and filling in some of the detail. So those are prior, but that doesn't necessarily mean these happened before that. Do you see what I mean? Like when it talks about the 2 witnesses here in a little while, or the coming of the Antichrist, those are prior to much of what we've already read. So we're reading along, and then we jump back and come back through it again from a different perspective. And I'll explain the perspective shift when we get to it. But so this is more than anything what it is. It's a wait for it, here it comes, and then it starts to really unfold some just dramatic things. It says, "Then I saw 7 angels who stand before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them." Now, we don't know if these are specifically 7 angels that are unique. Some commentators refer to them as the presence angels, that they stand in the presence of God all the time. That's very likely the case. I think it's Gabriel, when he's talking to Mary, says he stands in the presence of God, so he may be one of the presence angels as an example. Other folks will say back in chapter, I think it's 1, where it talks about the 7 spirits of God. They would say that's these 7 angels, because angels are referred to as spirits. I made the case at the time that I think that's a reference to the 7-fold nature of the Holy Spirit. That makes more sense to me there, but again, there's which one of those that is again somewhat debatable. But that's who these guys are, and they've been given these trumpets, and these trumpets kind of herald in the next judgment, as it were. So as the seal would break in the first seal, then one of the 4 living creatures would say, "Come," and here comes the judgment. Well, with this one, there is no more breaking of seals. The 7th seal has been broken, and the 7th seal are these 7 trumpets, and actually on from there. And so now there's no more breaking of seals. Now it's a trumpet is blasted, and the next one, and then another trumpet, and the next one. So we'll see that unfold here. It says, "And another angel." Let me pause for a moment. There's 2 words in Greek, and again, I'm not a Greek scholar, so I rely on others. But they tell us there's 2 Greek words. One is heteros, which means another of a different kind. It's where we get hetero, like sexual, as opposed to homosexual. Homo would be different of a similar kind, right? Hetero is another of a different kind. So this is another angel, but of a different kind. Or no, I think I've got that wrong. This is another angel. It's the one that's homo. It's the same kind of angel, I think, is the point. And I heard that explanation. I think I got that mixed backwards. So yeah, this is not an angel of a different kind. This is an angel of the same kind. And so the point of that being said is that some will say this angel may be Jesus, but it's another angel of the same kind, therefore it would not be Jesus. It's one of the ways we believe that it is not Jesus. The other thing would be is that Jesus is referred to as the angel of the Lord, but only in the Old Testament. He's never referred to as an angel in the New Testament. So that would be another reason for us to think this is just another angel that comes and does this. So another angel came and stood at the altar with a golden censer, and he was given much incense to offer with the prayers of all the saints on the golden altar before the throne. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints rose before God from the hand of the angels. So, what's happening here, when you think back to the Old Testament and you've got the tabernacle and then the temple, when you would first come in, there was a brazen altar where they would offer burnt offerings, sacrifice. Then you'd have the laver where you'd wash. Then you'd go into the holy place, and there was the table of showbread, the menorah, the 7 lamp candlesticks, and then you'd have this golden altar on which they would offer incense. And they would do that, if I remember right, it was every day. And it was always associated with the Ark of the Covenant and the mercy seat. But it was not in the Holy of Holies with that, because they only went there once a year. And this offering of incense they would do daily. So we know that the tabernacle was given very explicit instructions on how to build it, because it is kind of representative of, or a model of, what we see in heaven. And here's an example of that. Here's the real golden altar that they had built a replica of, so to speak, in the Old Testament for the tabernacle, and then again in the temple. So this is the real golden altar that we see there. And they would burn incense on it, and the smoke of the incense was representative of the prayers. And so this talks about here in verse 3, and he was given much incense to offer with the prayers of all the saints. So when you think about that, as you've prayed over your lifetime, all these prayers are going to this altar, and they're like an incense offering or a fragrance to God. And what he's doing here is taking the prayers, or the effect of those prayers, you might say, and this incense, and he's scooping it up with this golden censer. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saint rose before God from the hand of the angel. So, then the angel took the censer and filled it with fire from the altar and threw it on the earth, and there was peals of thunder, rumbles, flashes of lightning, and an earthquake. So this is the opening salvo, so to speak, from heaven onto the earth of the first, as this seventh seal is opened, there's 7 trumpets given, and then this happens. So we have this thunder, lightning, and an earthquake because of the throwing down of this fire from the altar. So where we're at, I want you to see this. This is the 7th seal. I've kind of removed the pauses to help make this more clear. The 7th seal includes everything else. There is no other seal to be opened. Remember our scroll that we snap a seal and open a little bit and read, and then snap another seal and open it a little bit? We're to the end. And when you get to the last of it, you break the 7th seal and you open it up, it says blow 7 trumpets and dump out 7 bowls. You know what I mean? And this is all laid out here for us. So the 7th seal includes all those trumpets and all the bowls, is what we'll see over time here.
Chris,
Yeah.
I have a question with this chapter 8, verse 4.
Okay.
We just got done praying
Yeah.
our prayer time.
Yes.
So, did it just get mixed? Let's see, the smoke of the incense and our prayers got mixed, prayers of the saints, and then it ascended to God? I mean, is that what's happening when I pray right now?
Here's the thing. In verse 3,
Wow.
yeah, wow. And another angel came and stood at the altar with a golden censer, and he was given much incense to offer with the prayers of all the saints. So, what I would read that to say is that all the prayers of all the saints are kind of there. Now again, I don't know if that means they're like written on slips of paper and there's this giant pile of paper. It's not that. You see what I'm saying? It's there. They're like, that's the representative of all these prayers of all of history. Now, we remember what one of these prayers was. We saw it in chapter 5 when the souls of the martyrs under the altar prayed and said, "How long, O Lord, before you avenge us?" Right?
Right, yeah.
Those prayers are specifically probably the ones being thought about in this section, because that vengeance on those earth dwellers who have done this martyrdom is about to unleash. So,
Okay.
does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
But all of our prayers go up before God as incense, a fragrance to Him, and this golden altar simply is kind of the representation of where those would be or collected. Go ahead.
Kind of brings to mind that when we're praying, we always should be praising, because we want a good incense
Yeah.
to the Lord, instead of, oh, woe is me, help me do this, help me do that, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I don't feel well.
Yeah.
It's a great memory.
That
I
and
mean, a great vision of,
when Jesus says, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven, right? He's instructing us to pray that way. That kind of prayer is what's being answered here. Lord, bring your kingdom. Well, He's about to. And the way He does that is with the unfolding of these judgments. So,
Since He created time and we're bound by it, this could be happening at this very moment, right up to the point of verse 5. So in essence, he's in and out and through everything that we're doing constantly, right?
You mean our prayers collecting there and them being an incense?
He's getting it as an incense because
Yeah.
it's coming up to him now, even though
Right.
he hasn't,
Right.
we haven't gotten into the last part of it.
Sure, yeah, the filling the angel took the censer and filled it with fire in the altar, that's, yeah, not now. But the fact that they are there as, before God as an incense offering, that would be true now, yeah, yeah. So there's the
Only
answer.
the unanswered prayers.
Do what?
Only unanswered prayers would still be accumulated.
You think?
I don't think, after God answers the prayer, I don't think
They're
he has
still
to
there.
accumulate them anymore.
Yeah, that may be, I don't know. That's
That's
interesting.
the way
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah, it's good. So here's what I've got. What is the seventh seal judgment? It's thunder, lightning, earthquake, along with the 7 trumpet and 7 bowl judgments. That's all included in this 7th seal. So one thing I want you to see, these seals have been kind of opening, and we think they're taking a fair amount of time. There's a period of peace, then there's war, then there's famine. Now famine takes a bit of time. You know, you don't get starved to death in a day. It's going to last a while. How long? Don't know. My point is they kind of come in a rather maybe sedate order. Think of it that way. Then when the trumpet judgments get here, they are far more rapid fire. Now, there is one that goes on for 5 months, so that's a little bit longer period of time. But they also, we'll see this today, but after the first 4 trumpets, then there's an announcement of 3 woes are coming. I mean, these are so much worse than the first 4. It's like, whoa, number 5, and whoa, number 6, right? So let me show you this as a way of illustrating that. So they start off rather spread out, and then they get more compact, and the last 3 are bigger events, so to speak, so I've bolded those. And then down here, they get even more rapid fire, and it's like there's no spaces between the between the numbers. It's just bang, 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 bang. So it's like birth pangs, as he's told us, right? It starts out hard and painful, but then it gets worse, and then it's hang on to your hat, because, you know what I'm saying? That's the nature of these. As we go further in, they get more and more dramatic. So, just as a visual way to kind of see that. Now, the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared to blow them. So they're all ready to go now. This is in chapter 8, verse 6. So what is the first trumpet? That's what we're going to look at next. And the answer, in part, okay. The first angel blew his trumpet, and there followed hail and fire mixed with blood. And these were thrown upon the earth. So let me stop with that and say, we believe this to be real hail and real fire. Because the first 2 are real, does this mean there's actually blood raining down? I would think that probably. I mean, it's raining blood. Exactly what that's going to look like, don't know. But again, I don't see a reason not to think that that would be that way.
Well, it says mixed with blood. What else
Yeah.
would it be?
Yeah. I mean, when you look at the plagues of Egypt, there's a lot of similarities. They didn't rain blood in Egypt, but my point is, when they turned the Nile to blood, I think that probably was, a real thing. It wasn't. So again, God is able to do anything without any limit. So you can't say, well, what astronomical phenomena would produce blood? Well, no. God would be the one producing blood, So this is something I don't think there's any reason for us to think that it's not that. But
I've watched several of those shows where they tried to explain, oh, this could have happened and it would have turned red.
yeah.
You're like,
What is
God could have
the
done it too,
plankton or something, and got up
Something,
there,
yeah.
and a red tide and blah, 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 yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
it's interesting.
So here's the effect of this hail, fire, and mixed with blood. And a third of the earth was burned up. And a third of the trees were burned up, and all of the green grass was burned up. So, I don't know what a third, I was gonna look and I forgot to check, but I don't know if that's like, North and South America would represent something around a third of the land mass.
And is it the same third?
Yeah, and that's the issue. It could be North and South America is completely obliterated and there's just this pile of, smoking ash. Or it could be just where these things hit and they're scattered all over and you just have huge scorch marks and they added up to roughly a third. That seems to make more sense that it might be that way. Go ahead.
Could it be, if you look at the earth as a whole, isn't it about 1/3 land and 2/3 water? So could it be the entire earth, the land masses that were?
I don't think so because there's people left and it's burned up. So I don't think anyone survives wherever these are at. It's destroyed.
But she really makes a good point from even the scientific. If you have hail and fire mixed together, you're talking about frozen stuff burning. So
Well-
those could burn. I mean, I don't know.
No. Yeah, flaming ice is a bit odd, I would admit, but so is bloody flaming ice, so. Well, I guess my thinking would be it would be different. They're separate. Like there's hail chunks coming down and then there's like chunks of, meteorite or whatever that are flaming and when they hit, they catch things on fire. And so, but what's interesting too is it's a third of the earth was burned up, but all of the green grass. So like some of it's completely burned up and others, it just wipes out all the grass. Not all the trees, because only a third of the trees. Do you see what I mean? I mean, this is just, yeah. There's a lot of stuff we could speculate and guess and go, well, I think it would be, and the point is, we don't know. That's what we're given. So,
Nebraska's toast.
yeah.
Well, definitely New Orleans and Las Vegas.
So, answer to the question. Hail and fire mixed with blood, which burns up a third of the tree, or the earth and the trees along with all the green grass. That's what is encompassed in that first trumpet judgment.
But with that, can we assume that all mankind survived? Or is it possible that a third of the population of the earth is
Yeah.
taken out with this first judgment, first trumpet?
What's interesting is several of the others mention a third of mankind is killed. You know what I mean? So since this one doesn't mention that, I would think people die, but I don't know if we would say a third of meaning because it depends on where it would hit. If it hits in Nebraska, there aren't that many people there as opposed to say it hits New York. So since you have massive so I would assume people die, but I don't know if it's a third of them. I don't know.
There's a prophecy in Joel 2, in verse 2, or chapter 2, verse 30. And we know that Israel always wanted a sign, right? And
Yep.
God is giving them signs.
Yep.
Okay, so Joel says in verse 30, I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood, fire, pillars of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord come.
Yeah. So that is prophetic of the time period in which we're in. Yep. It's not, well, the blood part may be a specific to this judgment, and then the sun turning black is a different one, and you know what I mean? So that's more of a over the general arching time frame that we're in. So what's the second trumpet judgment? So let's look at that one. The second angel blew his trumpet, and something like a great mountain, burning with fire, was thrown into the sea. I want you to notice that he says something like. And you're going to see a lot of something like, or as it were. So anytime you see something like, or as it were, it's not saying it is a mountain. It's saying it's like a mountain. or it's something like a mountain, or it's, as it were, they had crowns of gold. That doesn't mean there's an actual crown of gold. It means it looked kind of like a crown of gold. So my point to you is that when we see something like, we have to, okay, so then what is that? And it could be a meteor that's large, you know, like a mountain. I mean, that makes sense that it might be that. Don't know for sure.
You have to assume that John is seeing things he's never seen before,
Yeah.
doesn't know how to describe it.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
When this happens, it's thrown into the sea. A third of the sea became blood, and a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. I would actually think this is something like the Atlantic Ocean is where this thing hits, and it's a third of that body. As opposed to like the land where it might be scattered, this one seems more likely to be a certain geographic area. So maybe the Mediterranean and the Atlantic or something in that nature becomes blood, and you wipe out all the shipping in those areas, and all the animals die in those areas, things of that nature. Something like a mountain is thrown into the sea. A third of the sea became blood. A third of the living creatures in the sea die, and a third of the ships are destroyed. That's what this third judgment is.
And some of the proof that these are actual, not,
Yeah,
you know,
figurative.
is the fact that five of these trumpet judgments, and this is one, are duplicates or were shown to the Jewish people, when they were,
At the
when
Exodus?
God was dealing with Pharaoh of Egypt.
Yeah, yeah.
So we've seen these things in the Bible, as you read Exodus.
Yeah. I'm going to draw a point related to that I forgot to stick in here. So I'm looking to find it currently, and we'll while you guys write. Yep, there it is. Okay. So can we move to the next slide? Are we?
Now, the Antichrist is in power while all this is going, right? Still?
Yes, I would,
Okay.
yeah. So what's the third trumpet, third trumpet judgment? The third angel blew his trumpet, and a great star fell from heaven, blazing like a torch. Now, one comment here. The first time it was something like a mountain falls, and then the second thing, it's a star. Well, if those are both meteors, why isn't it calling both of them a mountain or both of them a star, right? So that leads to think that maybe this is something other than like a meteor. And some have speculated that this might be a fallen spirit, like a demon type thing, because they are sometimes referred to as stars. We'll actually see that here in a bit. But don't know. That's speculation. And it fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. So these third of rivers, that would be scattered around as well. That's, I don't think it's saying it hit, all, everything in North America is rivers, and that makes up a third of the world. It's more likely that it's hitting these rivers around the world. And then when it talks about, and on springs of water, that's the stuff coming up out of the ground. Again, which would tell me that it's probably not just a meteor that lands in a river and pollutes a river. It's potentially more than that. It says the name of the star is wormwood, which means like absinthe. It's an alcohol that can kill you. It's that kind of thing. It's associated with a poison. A third of the waters became wormwood, and many people died from the water because it had been made bitter. So again, this one tells us that a bunch of folks died. That other one did not mention it, but they very likely may have. We don't know. I can't imagine a third of the earth being burned up without people dying, but who knows? Maybe he hits all unpopulated population centers just to kind of crowd them more together. I don't know. God can do this however he wants to. But this one, we're specifically told lots of people are dying because of the waters becoming poisoned.
When you think of a river flows, so
Yeah.
you don't just contaminate a river, you contaminate where the river comes out,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't remember what the percentage is, but the Great Lakes are a huge percentage of the world's fresh water. So if you contaminated that and the Mississippi and, you know, the Nile and the Amazon and, you know, you've probably hit a third of the river, you know, I mean, or something. So we don't know exactly how that'll play itself out. So the answer to that one is it's a great star, maybe a fallen angel, not sure. Falls from heaven, and it poisons 1/3 of the fresh water, and many people die. What I wanted to talk,
Chris,
go
why
ahead.
would you assume or think it might be a fallen angel? I don't get the connection.
Because one of the earlier judgments says a great mountain. This one says it's a star. So my point being, they're somehow different. They're not the same. We don't know how they're different because it doesn't say mountain and mountain or star and star. It uses two distinct things. These are different things that are doing this damage. One of them turns a third of the sea into blood. The other one is going like all over the place, hitting springs of water down in the ground and on rivers. And angels are referred to as stars. The stars of the morning sang. That would be potentially a reference to angels. We'll see it actually in chapter 12, I think it is, where Satan falls and his fall is described, where he takes a third of the stars with him, which are referenced to. So it's just the fact that sometimes angels are referred to as stars, and therefore this might be that, and it might not. I actually don't know. It's just there's two views there, so I'm kind of telling you about both.
But it would have had to have broken up because I'm visualizing it like the hail.
Yeah.
It's hitting everywhere.
So if it's say a meteor that's made up of something poisonous, and it comes in at a shallow angle and it breaks into a billion pieces, and as the earth is turning, it's falling all over the place, and some of them are big and they go deep into the ground and hit a spring, and others are just landing in water, and if that's potentially possible. We don't know.
You know, this is neither here nor there, but I mean, it's just interesting to think, you know, you're the Antichrist. I mean, I wonder what he's thinking of all this. These judgments, you know, he's got all his people and he's got, you know.
Yeah. He's indwelt and empowered by Satan, and Satan can read, so Satan knows exactly what's happening, but he's obviously in denial of, he still thinks he can win, or he thinks he can't, but he's going to take as many with him as he can, or, you know, not sure exactly.
Is he in a bunker down under or something?
I don't know.
Later, like Hitler.
Yeah, again, he can't die either, and so he
Right,
may
yeah.
know that he's invincible and he's leading the troops from the front type thing, you know what I mean? We don't know. Maybe that's why people love
Probably just
him.
keeps Facebook from showing the actual footage.
That's probably true.
Well, angels don't die.
Yeah,
The fallen angels are all in the abyss. I mean, they're stored up.
yeah,
Until the very end. So I think the Antichrist is part of that. And he doesn't die until they throw him into the lake of fire.
right, yeah. Yeah. So, you just said something, let me ask that, you said all the fallen angels are in the abyss. Are you separating fallen angels from demons in that comment? Or, because I know that there's a view that they're different in some way, but, because I mean, we know there are demons in the world today that aren't in that, and I'm not, my point of saying that is I'm not separating them that way as I'm thinking about this. They very well may be different. Demons and fallen angels might be different, but I'm not dealing with that topic this morning, so. I just,
Good.
yeah, good, all right. Go ahead.
There are some that are in prison right
Yes.
now to be unleashed in this
Yeah.
last time, and I can't remember whether that was demons or fallen angels. I can't remember.
I think it refers to them as spirits.
Spirits?
So we just, yeah, yeah. And in
That's
fact,
right.
when Jesus casts out some demons, they say, don't send us to the abyss, right? Don't send us to the bottomless pit. you know.
Looks appalling.
So apparently they can go there. So that's why I kind of lump them all together. Fallen spirits, fallen angels, demons, I kind of lump them all together. Some have been so bad, they've always been there. Some have been so bad, they've been imprisoned there. We read about that in 2 Peter, where because of what they did around the time of the flood, they were imprisoned. These guys in Luke or wherever it was where Jesus is talking to the demoniac, they're saying, no, don't send us there yet. Let us go into the pigs. And then we're going to see those folks here actually in a few minutes if I get that far. Go ahead.
I've got a point of confusion.
Sure.
A fallen angel, God didn't make demons, he made angels.
Right. And a third of them.
So aren't all demons fallen angels?
Yes, they would be. My point is some people want to divide that into two groups, and one can do this and the other, and I'm just clarifying, I'm not going there. I don't know about that. So.
The other point is that in the end, we see that there are like 3 million of them, so it's a lot of fallen angels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many angels are there? I would guess in the billions is my actual, don't know.
Chris, do you think the people that are living now, I'm thinking of an apocalyptic movie.
Yeah.
There's a moment where they actually see the monster, and they're
Yeah.
going, okay, this is supernatural.
Yeah. Well,
Are they going to actually get that this is supernatural, or are they still going to be sitting back going, this is global warming, we warned you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
thank you for the segue. No. We know that people can look at reality and absolutely deny it, right? I mean, that is on steroids right now in our culture. Women with beards, and stuff like this, because they're not women, but they think they are. And so my point is, we can take just reality, and reality is irrelevant, but that's not what I think, so therefore it's not true. So this could be, they're absolutely in denial the whole time. The reason I don't think that's actually what's happening is at one point, which is earlier, they say, who can save us from the wrath of the Lamb and the one on the throne? I think they've gotten it at this point, that this is a battle between God and Satan. And I think that's kind of the point of the mark of the beast whenever we get there. That is, I'm on his team. Sign me up. Mark me down. I want everybody to know I'm with him. It's not an accidental, oh shoot, I got the mark. It's a SS tattoo on your forehead to make sure everybody knows I'm a friend of Hitler. It's that kind of thing. Because I think by that point, they get it. They understand what's happening. There's almost like no way to deny it. Some of the stuff that's happening is just, beyond explainable in any other way.
But Satan has lies for everything.
Yeah.
So they can believe his lies.
And he can tell them we'll win. I know it says we won't, but we will. Okay. And they're signing up. What I wanted to talk about thus far, I want you to think about what has happened. He's burned a third of the earth, a third of the trees, all the grass, turned a third of the oceans to blood, killed a third of the fish. Here he's killed off a third of the fresh water. He doesn't mention it, but I'm thinking fish in the rivers in there would be dying, right? What is he doing?
Sending a message.
I think we talked about it earlier. Remember the judgments in Egypt? I don't know if you're aware of this, but those judgments were aimed at the gods of Egypt, right? Who is the god of this world today? Gaia, Mother Earth, the creation, not the creator. That's what I was looking for. Romans 1, verse 18 is where I'll start. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness, for men who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. We see that again, rampant today. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and his divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made, so they are without excuse. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God, nor give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools, and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man, birds, reptiles, creeping things, and therefore God gave them over to depravity. And then it goes into the section about homosexuality. I think it's fascinating that as they reject God, and that keeps increasing. Stop and think about this. If I'm in the 1600s and I believe in creation, I have no reason not to, because that makes sense. I don't know anything about science. I know nothing about single-celled organisms and all this stuff, right? The more you study that stuff, the more you realize, oh my gosh, every single-celled organism has DNA and is complex beyond our ability to comprehend. This whole thing, I thought stars were bright spots in the sky. I didn't know that they were flaming balls of gas a million light years away, you know. The more we know, the more it is just amazing how awesome God truly is. The distance of our planet from the sun is set at the perfect distance, at the perfect angle, at this perfect rotation. The more you know that, the more God becomes obvious. You cannot accidentally make all that stuff happen. We're at a time frame where everybody ought to be a creationist. We have more evidence than anybody in human history's ever had. And our hard-heartedness says, no, more and more evidence, no, I don't want that. Why? We'll find out next week, because I won't get to it this week. So I'll just tell you, spoiler alert, we don't believe it because we love our sin and we don't want God. We don't want anybody to tell us what to do. That's why we believe in evolution, for those that do. And so my point is, what comes with this rejection of God and his invisible attributes that he has made plain, and the more you study the creation, the more his attributes become plain, and as you push that further and further away, you become foolish and declare yourself to be wise. That's absolutely what you see happening today. What comes along with that is then, for this reason, God gave them up to dishonorable passions, for their women exchanged natural relations for those that are contrary to nation, and men likewise. These things go together, right? When you start to become foolish in your thinking and you reject the obvious thing that there's someone who has created all this, everything goes sideways. And we're seeing it all come together right now in one fell swoop. Here's my point. What's he doing? He's attacking their God. He's attacking creation. Totally within his right. He made it. He can tear it up if he wants to. But these people, what made me pick up on this is one of these guys I was listening to said, now if you're an environmentalist, you're saying, what does this God think he's doing tearing up my creation, that I think so much of, PETA is on the rampage. Look at all the animals he's killing, and the Sierra Club's angry because he's messing up their trees, and right? He's coming after their God, and he's showing, I'm God, and he's just devastating this stuff. I just think there's a connection there to not be missed. And that's never really made sense to me until just recently, as you see this escalation of really almost earth worship. Just a phenomenal thing.
You had mentioned 144,000 invincibles.
Yes.
I think that would be obvious to everyone.
Yeah.
All this damage is going on, but there's these 144,000 very effective missionaries.
Yeah.
Until you brought it
damaged.
Until you brought it up, though, I never thought that's what they were. Because you hear different mentions of the 144,000 in different
context.
religions, whatever is what it means to be. So
Right.
it's like, okay, what really is that?
Yeah. It's these invincible missionaries that go all over the world and spread the gospel. What's amazing is it's them, it's two witnesses that also can't be killed, we'll read about in the future, and they're sharing the gospel. At one point you see an angel It's called an eagle. We think it's an angel, flying around the globe, spreading the gospel message. And there isn't anybody left that doesn't know. It's blanketing the earth with the gospel. So again, what would be the point of all these? It's the same point it always is. It's if you have a rebellious child, you put them in timeout for 5 minutes. And that doesn't work, so you put them in timeout for 10 minutes. That doesn't work, so you take away this toy. And that doesn't work, so you put them in their room for an hour. And that doesn't work. And you just keep amping it up until you finally get through to them that, hey, I'm the boss here. Notice the escalation, right? And all the time you keep having some say, okay, you know what, you're right. And we've all probably been there. I remember being in a state of rebellion at 21 saying, God, I'm fine without you. And a year later in the fetal position on my living room floor with a bleeding ulcer going, okay, you win. I'm not fine without you, right? He has to do that with many of us, and he is doing that with these folks. And many are coming to Christ, being martyred, and others are no. They are that ultimate rebellious child, and they refuse to love the truth and so be saved. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. What's the fourth judgment? We'll wrap this one out and then we'll have to. The fourth angel blew his trumpet. This one's a little different. It doesn't come in two parts. He blows his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars. So their light, a third of their light might be darkened, and a third of the day might be kept from shining, and likewise a third of the night. Now, could this be something, a cloud blanket that surrounds the earth that simply blocks out 1/3 of solar activity, and therefore we can't see the light coming in from space, from stars and moon? Very likely could be that. It could be a supernatural turning down of the sun and all the other stars. So it's perfectly clear sky between here and there, but it's only got a third of its light. That's possible. That'd be more impressive. I likely think that maybe that's what it is. Just because God's going to show that, hey, you know what? Look at this, with the light control on the sun. I mean, this is all about demonstrating He is who He is. So I almost think most of these aren't things that are explainable. He's over there with the dimmer switch doing this to them, and they have to pay attention to that. So all of these are things designed to get attention. The fourth judgment, a third of the light from the sun, moon, and stars is struck. And then we have this.
So
And
the
this will be a
entire world's
great.
gonna look like Fort Wayne most of the year.
I think they would all love to have Fort Wayne. This will look more like the dark side of the moon by this point. So what are these three woes? We'll look at them starting next week. Oh, yep. So the 8:13 says, "Then I looked, and I heard an eagle crying with a loud voice as it flew directly overhead. Woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth, at the blast of the other trumpets that the three angels are about to blow." Now, you've seen everything. That tells me they might be able to hear these trumpets on the earth. Maybe they can't, I don't know. But that to me sounds like maybe they can. So they hear something, and then boom, and then they hear something, and boom. And they've had 4 of those, and now there's this eagle or angel flying overhead saying, "Woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth." We talked about it before. Dwell on the earth is a phrase used a bunch of times in Revelation, and it always refers to the unsaved. We refer to them shorthand as earth dwellers. You and I dwell on the earth, but we're not earth dwellers. We're foreigners. We're aliens. We're citizens of heaven. These folks are those who dwell on the earth. At the blast, now notice this is all in quotes. Woe, woe, let me do this. Woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth at the blast of the other trumpets that the 3 angels are about to blow. Again, that doesn't make sense if they know nothing about the trumpets. That's what makes me think they're hearing them. And now they know you ain't seen nothing yet. Hang on to your hat.
Just the beginning.
This is just getting warmed up, and it is. The next ones are, wow, yeah. Amazing. So we will tackle that next week. Let me pray for us. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for your word. Thank you for the message that you have for us. Lord, I'm mindful of the fact that we're happy to know that we will not have to go through all of this calamity. But we also are mindful of the fact that we know many friends and family and loved ones that will. And so, Lord, I pray that this study this week and next week would just be a great reminder to us of the importance and the urgency to talk to those who don't know you about the salvation that you offer. The simple message of recognizing that I'm a sinner, that I have no hope of ever being good enough in my own effort, that I must trust solely in what Christ has done with his work on the cross of dying and raising from the dead, acknowledging him as God and surrendering not just all of my life, but surrendering my eternity to say, Lord, I trust in you and you alone. That's it. That's all I can do, because I can never do it on my own. That simple message, I pray that we would take that to those we care about, that we'd share it with them, that these texts would give us a sense of boldness because of our love for those folks. Bring us back together next week as we continue to unfold your word. And we pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.